And so Michael Thompson, David McPeak, Sky Data Vault, one of their focuses is effectively disrupting and providing. So when we're looking at backup and DR, they are effectively disrupting that side of the house and providing both managed services components as well as simplifying that aspect, as well as they're starting to dip into other areas within that side of the house, and I'll let them kind of approach that. But we're going to put a very similar approach to the tank in here, where nobody here we're not scripted in our questions. So we have Eric Norman from IHG. He's going to be our featured speaker later. Brian Doyle over at Scion, the Scion Group, which is effectively their property management across 126 locations. How many campuses again? Sorry. 78 campuses from a college perspective, university perspective across the country. And then we have Cynthia Wicklander from Nike. She is one of the leads on the retail side of the house. She's been in IT in the Portland area for quite some time, and she does some amazing things over at Nike. So, and then myself will be one of the other sharks. So the way that this is going to be structured is Michael and David will be doing a 5-minute pitch effectively to us and to you guys as well. And then we're gonna bombard them with questions in regards to what they're seeking, your investment in disaster recovery and backup of your data. So obviously, typically you have $100,000 at 10%, blah, 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 blah. But obviously, this is not, nobody's investing in the company right now, but it's an opportunity for us to dig in within their organization, help us all understand it, throw them hard questions, some softball questions, of course, but at the same time, I know that they can both handle it. So great. So we'll get started. Michael Thompson, David McPeak, you can do your pitch.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Sharks. My name is Michael Thompson. I'm one of the co-founders of Sky Data Vault. I handle sales and strategy. With me is Dave McPeak.
I oversee all of the IT and operations.
And Sharks, today what we're going to be asking for you is time for you to invest with us to discover what's possible when it comes to backup and disaster recovery. And when we started this company, the idea was let's do something different. And by different, we mean let's just disrupt the industry and stop doing piece parts and start bringing a managed services approach. Because it all comes down to time. We all have a finite amount of it, and the only way we get more of it is we bring new people into the organization and spread that across the workloads that we have. So if we as a service provider can come into the marketplace and offer a way to offload that work and take care of that for the organization, you can then redirect your time to other areas of the business that are core to your competencies. We started at—
Hold on real quick. Only because nobody can see that. Because Brian and Eric, let's scooch you over just a tad bit. I want to make sure everybody can see that. Sorry, I didn't realize that.
I was just getting going.
I know you weren't.
So Sharks, here's the pitch. We started as a backup and disaster recovery as a service company. We have since expanded to include infrastructure as a service, storage, Office 365 backup, and professional services. And the goal here is consistently about saving time for organizations we work with. But how do we do this? So this is the secret sauce, is that we've built our own private cloud, which means we control the costs, we control the customer experience, and we're now able to bring agility and flexibility to your organization so that you can do whatever it is you're trying to accomplish as an organization. One of the key differentiators I'll have Dave speak to is the sandbox that we have at Sky Data Vault, which is an area that we can design, build, do a proof of concept for any idea that you have for the organization. So it's taking the workloads off of your shoulders and putting it on ours. Dave, did I leave you anything to talk about?
No, thank you very much. So our network is essentially made up of 5 different nodes. The first would be, or part of the network is dedicated to doing specifically backups of your data. This is going to be at a very low level, just file and folder backups. I lost a file, I got a virus, something like that, restore that file. The second part is going to be related to disaster recovery. This is more about, hey, my building fell over. I have a long-term power outage. I have a crypto lock, a serious event that's going to bring the organization down for a long period of time. In that scenario, you'd be able to leverage disaster recovery to turn on an exact copy of your network, either individual pieces or the entire piece, in our cloud and get back to work. In a lot of cases, we can pre-stage DNS names, IP addresses, firewalls, anything that the customer would need to put in place to shorten the amount of downtime for the users to get back to work. The other part is the infrastructure as a service, in which if you're looking to move into the cloud, whether it be in its entirety or certain parts of it, you can move those workloads into our cloud, and we can append those other services onto it. Meaning you would be hosted out of our Dallas data center. We can do disaster recovery on those systems and replicate you to one of our other data centers. We can also do backup as a service for maybe some workloads that are not quite as important. You know, I have archive data I need to hold on to, but no one's ever going to look at it. And so you can protect that data at a lower cost. And the main idea is that once you're inside the ecosystem, you can touch each one of those pieces as needed, as much or as little as you need.
And Sharks, what I think is important to understand too is that we're delivering this all as a managed service in our private cloud. So we're transparent with our pricing, and it's a flat fee model. So you're able to control your costs and the time that you're spending on this. When it comes to customer outcomes, we're focused not necessarily on technology. We're focused on 3 core areas. How can we help reduce risk? How can we help increase efficiency? And how can we help grow revenue for the organizations we work with? And there's different components that fall under each one of these. The goal is to make sure we're aligned to what the business is trying to accomplish, not just trying to sell technology. But the reviews speak for themselves. So last year we did a large intensive marketing study, and we had actual customer feedback, and this is some of the feedback that we got. The goal here is to put a confidence level with our customers they didn't have before by bringing our expertise to the organization and to the industry. So Sharks, what we're asking for is time for you to spend with us to understand how we can better align to what you're trying to accomplish in your business.
Awesome.
And this is where you get to pepper us with really hard questions, right?
Yep. So
It's a great business plan, but I'm out.
I think I just broke the record for the fastest shark pulling the cord.
You pulled the rip.
I'm still in. All right.
So I'll start it off. I appreciate kind of how you walk through the different components, how you guys are differentiating. Obviously, there's a managed services component over the top of it to simplify, because when an organization, and I don't know everybody here, from a backup and disaster recovery perspective, are you managing all of those components yourself, or do you have a team that is doing that, or an outsourced team that is doing that today? Just a show of hands, real quick. If you know. If you don't know, then that's fine too.
You gave us 2 choices.
Did I give you 2 choices? Are you managing internally? Yes. Okay. Who's managing externally or using an outsourced organization to manage it? Okay. So with that, with organizations that, like, you're obviously competing with, hey, there's solutions that are point solutions that provide the backup and disaster recovery so that the internal teams can manage it for internal resources. Like, what are you guys doing to effectively combat that? And why wouldn't somebody just do that as opposed to leveraging your resources for this?
So it's a great question. And I think when someone asks me, well, who do you compete against? I think change of what is currently being done today, which is typically self-managed, is what we deal with. And from a technical standpoint, I think what Dave has built is fantastic. But it is a component, or it's a delivered service that has a software component to it, a storage component to it, and a managed component to it that you're doing yourself. So you're checking the backups, you're making sure that the tests are working and all these things. The reality is that stuff never gets done. I have a 17-year-old kid. right? He's a great guy. He's supposed to do the garbage. He's supposed to do the clean of his room, and he's supposed to take care of the dishes. Well, when he doesn't do those things, the dishes pile up, the garbage doesn't go out, his room's a mess, and it's on me to take care of that. Or it just piles up and piles up and piles up. So when we talk to customers, sometimes we ask them, hey, if something were to happen, how long would it take you to recover that system? And they've never tested it before. Or the person that installed the software no longer works at that company. There's a lot of breakpoints that happen on just the care and feeding, let alone when a disaster occurs. So the ability for us to receive a phone call from someone saying, hey, something has broken, and to understand the situation and have done a type of recovery hundreds of times to walk them through that process or to do that for them is the value that we're looking to bring.
Yeah, I can elaborate on that a little bit. So what Mike is saying is true. A lot of times, I've been an engineer for 30 years, and I know when I
I'm
would come
sorry.
into the office, thanks. When I would come into the office on Monday morning, a lot of times there'd be a line of people outside the door. My mouse doesn't work. I can't print. I can't get in from can't VPN in from the office or whatever. And so these types of things get to be tend to get pushed down. I'll check the backups tomorrow type thing. So a lot of times when we speak to people, there's like 4 or 5 questions that we'll ask them. Are you running backups? A lot of times they don't even know. Okay, yes, I am running backups. Are they working? They don't know. What software are you using? I don't know. Is that software under warranty? I don't know. When's the last time you tested a restore? When's the last time you did a failover? All of these things get pushed to the bottom. Generally speaking, a lot of the time the engineers are working for people who don't necessarily understand that these things need to be looked at. So as an engineer, when you can outsource that, and I will come to you when there's a problem, say, hey, we've had some failures in this backup for the last 2 times. Can we work together and take a look at it? In the meantime, they're doing all of those other things, and we're managing the protection of the data. The other layer is when the building actually does burst into flames and you need to fail over, you don't have to figure it out yourself. You call us and we'll have that conversation and okay, what's the best way to get your people into the data? What's the best way? How long are you going to be down? How fast do you need to be up? What needs to be up first? Who needs to get in first to the network? Those types of things. So that's what our team does every day, basically. So as you're panicking and people are banging on your door, we're getting the network back up and running, and you can take care of those other things.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
I've got a question. So if I'm a company that I build applications that are highly resilient, they're across multiple regions or around the world or in the country, my apps are decoupled or microservices, they're spread around all over the place. It's sort of DR built in. So what's the value of me looking at DR with you?
Well, if you have, the best case scenario is to have something that's spread out. I think that even in the best of environments, if you look at Azure or AWS, to use the biggest ones available, they have outages. There are things that stop working. There are things that you would never think happen that happen, right? That's why we're in that business. So when you look at those types of applications, you want to focus in on the types of things that are going to be your single points of failure or your biggest risk, right? The thing that you didn't expect to happen. And that's really where we would focus our attention and protect that center piece that is pivotal for everything else.
Okay. And then Eric, I think there's also a mindset that there's different levels of importance to different systems and applications. And sometimes protecting them correctly is the right way to approach it. And we've had some conversations with other mini sharks or piranhas that were out there already today. And one of the things we started talking about is data management, where large pools of data are starting to accumulate within the network and within the organization, and it's all protected and all stored the same way, the same cost. So one of the things we'll work with our customers on is to evaluate which data sets are the most important. How do we protect those, and how do we put them in a secure environment and then do backup or DR? And then for the other 90%, how do we cost effectively manage that? And then with a flat fee or transparent model, if you need to touch it, there's not a long delay, there's not a large bill at the end of the day, there's a price certainty to that our customers really enjoy.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Great question.
Great question.
What about bandwidth requirements to get the data out of my data center to yours? And what's the encryption between the two?
Yep. So there's a couple things on that. The first is it's an interesting question because the bandwidth that you have available is one thing. It's really how much of that bandwidth is available. So you could have a gig line or a 10 gig line going to the internet. How much data or how much bandwidth do you have available on that line in contrast to how much data you need to move to the cloud, how often, right? And I think that that's something that people don't really look at, and I hear about it all the time. Oh, we're getting pitched this DR solution, and I say, well, okay, how much data do you need to ship off every day? And they're like, oh, well, no one's ever asked us that. And these are actual questions that you need to know. You have to engineer the solution. You can't just plug something in. So if you have 50 terabytes of data and you're sitting on a 10 meg pipe, you're going to have a hard time, right? So those types of things need to be evaluated. And it's not just the bandwidth to get the data up into the cloud. There's an aspect of getting it back down and when you have to recover. And there's the internal aspect of moving the data. How many servers am I protecting in-house before I even ship the data off-site? And what's your structure look like inside? Are you on a 10-100 switch? Are you on a gig switch, a 10 gig switch? And our team looks at all of that and does an assessment, before the solution is put in place.
Cool.
So I had a question. So tell me about data, your guys' physical environment as far as where you're located. I see 5 locations, and do you own those locations? And what safeguards do you have in place to avoid your own disaster?
Yep.
As far as power, connectivity, those types of things?
Sure. So we're in the process of building the 5th location now. We have 4 locations. We have one in Sterling, Virginia, one in Miami, Florida, one in Sacramento, California, and one in Dallas, Texas. And they have different purposes and different roles. As far as the safeguarding of the data itself, this is really made up of multiple layers. So you have layers from the outside of our network on the switch fabric outside. You have layers at the firewall level and redundancies that are built in there. You have layers on the switching fabric inside of the network. And then you have deep layers on the storage itself, which of course is the most important data. So I don't want to get too technical, but we've all probably heard of RAID arrays or redundant arrays. So typically we use RAID 6 with a hot spare, which means that we could have 2 failures in a single array and still be completely fine. So 2 disks could fail simultaneously and we would be completely fine. We use Dell for our storage and we have a 4-hour response from them. So 2 disks or 1 disk could fail at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, and by 5 o'clock in the morning, we'd have a tech there replacing those disks.
The data centers themselves are not owned by Sky Data Vault, but we lease space, and all the equipment is owned and operated by Sky Data Vault and managed by our employees. So we don't outsource or nearshore anything else.
What do your physical buildings look like as far as your physical? I always like my buddy with the backhoe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're tier 3 data centers. So they have the redundant power, they have the batteries, they have the liquid fuel contracts, they have the barbed wire, they have the man traps, they have the individual with the sidearm for security, for physical security, and then there's different security layers within the data center themselves. They all carry certifications that our customers would need, from HIPAA compliance to SOC, PCI. The only thing, and just to be completely transparent, the only thing we don't do is FED. So FedRAMP certification or FedRAMP requirements from a federal government. I say 3-letter agencies in the sense of, well, you aren't going to work with the NBA. It's like, all right, fair point. So yeah, any of the 3-letter government agencies, we wouldn't do that. But we do state and local government if they want.
So because of the managed service, we don't have direct access to the backup data. It would just be your team.
You actually do. So you have access to the data. It is your data. The only thing that we keep to ourselves is the actual turn up of the data, because it's specific to our network. But you would have access unfettered to any of the data that's stored on the network.
That leads me to my next question then. What about segregation of data between customers? Is there safeguards in place so that I couldn't somehow find my way into someone else's data?
Yep, absolutely. So there's a couple different things that we do depending on the type of service that it is, whether it be DR or infrastructure. From an infrastructure standpoint, there's multiple layers of firewalling and VLANing that separates all of the customers one from another. From a data storage perspective for backup and disaster recovery, I think someone asked this earlier, all the data is encrypted with your encryption key and then transmitted encrypted a second time. So essentially you get an SSL tunnel that gets for the data to be transitioned up into our cloud. There's 2 layers of encryption. And once the data lands in our cloud, it stays encrypted until you restore it.
Where are you keeping the encryption keys?
The customers have access to the encryption keys. Any encryption keys that we hold, we use an online portal that's
Okay.
secure. Like
So is it just, so customer is the only one that has access to those encryption keys?
Some customers elect to give us those keys to give us
Sure.
even more control over managing the data for them. Again, there's multiple reasons why you'd want to do that.
Yep.
Joe leaves the company and you're done, right?
Well, and also, I mean, if the encryption keys are kept in a single place by the customer, you now have problems.
Yes.
Yes.
If that somehow is locked out, those encryption keys are not accessible anymore, then we've got other problems. So I'm just
And you'll
curious.
generally find that out about 1 minute after you have an emergency.
Yeah. Do you happen to do you typically advise them? Do you give them guidelines on where to keep their encryption
And
keys?
yes, and in some cases it's diversifying, maybe giving the encryption keys to the CFO
Sure.
or COO or someone else on the executive team or board level, so that they have it. So you're outside of just the single stack. But it is depending on the governance of the company. We're going to give them best practices, but it's going to be up to them to do what they think is right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last question, and then we'll be completed with this is, so obviously you guys are kind of disrupting or differentiating yourself in the market by providing managed services over the top of different platforms. You have some proprietary aspects, but then you also have things where you can ingest or incorporate third-party technology. What keeps those big box or those big disaster recovery backup solutions that are the 800-pound gorillas in the market from doing exactly what you guys are doing and crushing you like the cockroaches that you are?
The Frank O'Leary on the stage, right?
Kevin O'Leary, yeah. If you know Shark Tank, sorry.
So being on the sales side, I have the joy of competing against a lot of these big box
Sure.
companies all the time. And I think what it comes down to is that when Dave and I created this company, it was built as a service organization. We wanted to provide a service to the business community that we thought we could serve, versus a lot of the big box organizations are data center companies that said, well, we have all the space and capacity. Why don't we just offer it as a service as well? And so the look and the feel and the way that customers interact with us are much different than what you see with the big box. And one of the slides that we had up there, one of the customers said that after the first meeting, we knew who we were going to go with.
Yeah.
And we are in competitive situations all the time, and we were not the least expensive because there is a managed overlay to it. But if you're looking to offload workloads and refocus on the core mission of your organization, I would give us a serious look.
Yeah, a lot of times what you'll see there is they go, sure, here you go. Here's your solution.
Yep.
And there are some flaws in that thinking, in my opinion. There's definitely organizations, maybe you have an IT team made up of 150 engineers.
Sure.
Of course, you can deploy this and manage it. I think that there's a very large segment of businesses that find value in having something that's managed by the people who designed it, right?
Sure.
So not only did we design and know the DR aspect of it, but now again, if you start layering in other things like infrastructure, okay? So I know your infrastructure and I know the DR. I'm the one managing, I'm the one that built it. So I can manage all of that for you. And so a lot of times what you see is people will come and instead of saying, I want this specific thing, they'll give you more of an idea. We're trying to move to the cloud, but we have some concerns about some data that we need to protect that's highly sensitive, but other stuff is not really so sensitive. And we can design something within our sandbox that will meet that specific need. So the core infrastructure of the network is already built. We can put you in any one piece of them or all pieces of them. And we definitely have customers that come in and use every single piece. They have the infrastructure, they have access from multiple offices into a single point or multiple points, offsite DR with replication, file and folder backup, in some case long-term cold storage, and even all the way down to Office 365 backups.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it. Thank you again
Thank you,
for
Sharks.
Yep.
Did we get the meeting?
I'm still in. I'm still in.
I'll get the meeting.
All right.
Sure. She's like, I'll do it. Fine. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Thank you.